Well, guys, Tulsi's got me in tears again. That amazing candidate, that amazing woman. Well, guys, Tulsi's got me in tears again. I'm sitting here in my shed of a palace, my spaceship, envisioning a future that is truly better. And I was watching that ad that was coming right off of Tucker Carlson's show. You can say what you want about Tucker Carlson, what's she doing on a right-wing show, whatever. Fact of the matter is, Tucker's also anti-war, and quite frankly, there's not that many politicians on either side of the aisle who are really willing to be outspoken against war. And when I say politicians, I mean any of the media managers. They don't all have to be directly involved in politics to be politicians. To a large degree at this point, George Clooney and Ellen are politicians. We just need to call them what they are. If they get hired by an agency to influence our politics, they might be media personalities we like, but they are also politicians or lobbyists at best. Anyway, some people probably look at that Tulsi ad and think, she's delusional. She's only polling at a few percent. What is she talking about? This being a race between her and Hillary Clinton. What about Bernie? What about Yang? What about Tom Steyer? Not Joe Biden. She's right. She's absolutely right. When you get right down to it, what Hillary Clinton stands for is continuing turning a blind eye to corruption, continuing to make excuses for war. And when you look at the other candidates on that stage, Warren wants to green our military. Buttigieg, well, we know how he stands on war. He's a, 9 or 12-year intelligence asset. Bernie has a terrible voting record on war, has never really said anything all that much against war anyway. He voted for Iraq 1, Afghanistan. He voted for bombings in Serbia and Gaza. He's never gone against our Israeli asset interests. He voted against Iraq too because that was the fashionable thing to do, and he's touted it since. But I hate to say it, but in 2019 he's become much less vocal. He's taken a much leaner stance on that position because he recognizes that with Tulsi really leading the charge with that one, and with how much she's getting thumped for it, he wants to take all the votes that she won't be able to get because she's the anti-war candidate. When we look at Andrew Yang, he says he's going to end war. Oh, before we get to Yang, I suppose, Bernie also supports transitioning Maduro, and he's talking about that evil dictator Sisi in Egypt who's going after the people that are genociding Coptic Christians. We need to let those protesters do what they're doing. I'm sorry, but it's not as simple as any leader of a country that we don't like, that we can't control, is a brutal dictator, and any protesters in the country of that brutal dictator need to be supported, because sometimes they're committing horrible acts and we need to police against them. In Venezuela, we have this story that was originally reported as Maduro was torching food trucks that were meant to, trucks that were bringing in rations to feed the people in Venezuela. And then somebody pointed out in the tape that you can see the rebels, not Maduro, but the people who were, rebelling against Maduro, throwing Molotov cocktails and burning those trucks. Probably because they would give them a bad name. So you can't tell me that those rebels that are burning food that's meant to support the populace are entirely in the right there. And, you can say what you want about Maduro, but the fact of the matter is Venezuela is destroyed right now because of decisions that we made and that the international bank made. So I think we need to let Venezuela transition themselves, but I think transition Maduro is by definition regime change. Now on to Andrew Yang. He says no more wars, but he also says that if Russia hacks our elections again, then he will see that as an act of hostilities, and I think most of Americans would agree with me on this one, and we don't. We really don't. Russia is not the problem. We do so much meddling in so many countries' elections, and to say that if we can get some Russians caught in our system, that's a cause to go to war. No, no, no. Besides that, he's basically silent on and doesn't really understand seemingly foreign policy. He's also been in Wall Street and philanthropy and healthcare and tech, and yet, even though he's spent a lot of time with the big tech people, he doesn't understand that censorship is a big issue. In 169 policies, he doesn't address trafficking or the censorship that enables it. Sorry, but for the guy who's the data-driven candidate who's listening and responding and taking advice and modifying and adding to his policies from the things that people talk about on Twitter, the fact that he still hasn't done anything about this issue, even though I've been talking about it and emailing him about it for 5 months, sorry, but yikes. And he wants to cooperate with China on AI and ignore their human rights violations. And what else? Generally speaking, I just don't think he understands what it even means to try to end war. Sure, he signed a pledge, but every single presidential candidate we've ever had has said they're against war. It's a whole different thing to actually take a stand against war in the modern era. And quite frankly, you look at how easily presidents have been bamboozled by the smoke and mirrors of the White House. I think that Andrew Yang is a businessman. I don't think that's the opposite of a businessman, for one. And if you want a UBI, I think there's a UBI candidate that also wants to end war and doesn't want to reunify the press. I think the fact that Andrew Yang wants to reunify the press tells you way more than the fact that he's signed a pledge to end war. Because a reunified press is how they sell us war. I don't think it's gonna... I think realistically, Tulsi really hit the nail on the head. This is a battle of the old corrupt business as usual. We're going to make compromises and let things happen. We are going to consent to the world getting horribly destroyed and to the worst kind of horrible things happening to kids. If you want to know more about that, here's a great book on that. This guy, Sean Atwood, he is someone to check out on YouTube. Sean Atwood. My man. But I'm sitting here listening to Tulsi say that, and my palace, my temple here is a shining beacon of light in the middle of my suburbia, and I feel it taking us to that future. Every single person that commercial resonates with, who knows that we do need to stand against war and that it is incredibly difficult, and there are so many corporate forces that stand against that. Every single time that resonates, that is one more very strong soul yearning pulling us in that direction. And the apathy or the I guess I could vote fors don't stand up to that. Alright guys, we're winning this one. We are going to take our future back with positive spirituality, with human planetarianism, by being well-spoken, intelligent, up on the facts, and not accepting smears, not accepting lies, not accepting people who cannot present evidence to back up their findings, evidence that stands up to scrutiny. Because I just watched a video yesterday that was talking about apparently the main source that talks about Tulsi Gabbard being part of an extremist cult is this guy who is a convicted he messed around with some young boys in Thailand, we'll say, and got convicted for it. And he has a forum where he got caught posting, talking about how we're going to come up with some way to smear and slander Tulsi, including maybe suggesting that we could talk about her brother being gay. And it's like, so you went from that ping pong to the other side and went with calling her, incredibly anti. It's just like, these are the guys. There are, maybe there are other people like this guy, but regardless, there are people conspiring together because they like messing around with kids to take this woman down because she posted up on her website an anti-trafficking stance. She's the only candidate in the race who has made any statement about that. Quite frankly, that is what we're fighting for right now. Right now, in the past couple of months, there have probably been over 1,000 people who do the most horrible things that you can imagine to our innocence, who've gone to prison. And whether it's been reported and gotten to your awareness or not, there's a lot that's happened since Jeff the Spider died. So you might want to find some good channels to tune into. Sean Atwood, Graham Elwood, Tiffany Fitzhenry. I have a list of over 30 people that talk about this very hard-hitting issue. Some famous names you might recognize: Ashton Kutcher, Roseanne Barr, Aaron Carter. There's a lot more names you'd recognize of people that are doing these horrible things than people you would recognize as far as people exposing and disclosing these horrible things, but it's a matter of being above or below the line. If you're below the line, if you don't get yourself compromised, if you don't go to the parties and involved with the drugs and the worse, they can't get a picture of you doing those things, then they won't trust you to, keep their secrets. You don't get the producer deals. You don't become an A or B list star. You don't get to influence people's opinions. You can keep living your life, say what you want, but there's this really great Elizabeth Warren quote in this book, The Deep State by Mike Lofgren, another book I highly recommend reading. But she says basically, Larry Summers was talking to her and said, you can be an insider or an outsider. Outsiders can say what they want, but insiders don't listen to what they have to say. Insiders get access to all the powerful people, and they get the chance to influence and make a difference. But they can't criticize other insiders. And this is how they make sure that you can't criticize other insiders. One of the ways that they make sure that you can't criticize other insiders. And as long as they can hold something over you, look at these really drugged out celebrities that keep getting, star deals and it has to do with having money, being from a moneyed family, that's part of it. But that's not all of it. Anyway, there's a lot at stake. We really can't have another reunify the oppressed corporatist coming back into the office. You can say what you want about the Orange Man. He's pretty bad in some things, especially in what he says, and especially, but I urge you to consider that most of what you know about the Orange Man, it comes to you from a media organization that does not have your best interests in mind and has a very, very biased opinion of the Orange Man. I'm not trying to defend him, I'm just trying to point out that in my entire lifetime, in many of the generation above me's entire lifetime, there has never been this many arrests of the kid herders. And I personally think that might have to do with why the entire world has flipped and turned upside down and hates a president who's kept us out of war. At worst you can disagree with him, but Bush didn't get this kind of flack, and he sent us into war. He sold us lies. Granted, I'm not trying to defend Orange Man. You can think what you want about him in these political times, quite frankly. I think we get lost way too much in what people think about one person, and it makes it hard to actually just listen to each other and have discourse about facts and good information. Bottom line is, there is some reason that we can all sort of very easily pick up on that the media Borg does not like the Orange Man. And there's some other reason why suddenly all of these kid herders are getting arrested. Maybe they're connected, maybe not. But we need to make sure that that's something that continues. This can't just be something that we do halfway and then pretend we finished. We lock up all the low-level people, and all the really rich ones that fund everything just get to go and, live on their islands for a decade and cool off and keep a low profile and then go back to doing what they were doing. No, we can't have that. We need this to be something that we are, the world is aware of and that we can actively prevent. As a planet, we need to come together and stop people with more money than anyone knows what to do with being able to do whatever they want to do. Because there are some things that it doesn't matter how much money you have, you should not be allowed to perpetuate those sorts of horrors. And having a president that's willing to stand up to that and to actually keep that ball rolling and make sure America goes in the right direction is really important. Because, again, if we get the reunify the press guy, the reunified press is never unified around exposing the kid herders. And, a UBI without talking about that vile issue means that everyone who controls people that don't have control of their own lives, they now get $1,000 a month per head that they control in addition. They're going to go gangbusters because that whole industry works on money. They now get the added bonus of having all of their slaves go and collect $1,000 a month that also goes into, somebody's pocket related to the industry. UBI is an awesome idea. It's going to change the world. But since 2016, the tech companies have been promoting UBI relentlessly. I don't think that's coincidental. UBI is a 120-year-old idea, and I've been talking about it for longer than Andrew Yang has. It is the thing. It is the silver bullet to end poverty. But Yang's silver bullet to end poverty in 2014 was his entrepreneurship program that produced 2,800 jobs in 7 years when the goal was to produce 100,000 jobs in 14 years. And yet that underperforming job company netted him a gig in the White House less than a year after founding said company. Obama White House champion for change. And apparently they liked what he was doing, because in 2015 he got boosted up to a presidential ambassador for global entrepreneurship, which is another fancy term for globalism. Presidential ambassador for globalism. And clearly he let his venture for America fall by the wayside, and admits in his book that he even probably destroyed more jobs than he made through optimization and automation. So you're going to put the guy that destroys jobs, that says the only way to make jobs in America is to do a UBI, and besides that we're going to automate and optimize and get rid of as many jobs as possible, but don't worry, you'll be taken care of, against the guy that has demonstrated he can build jobs. No, let's put the woman who wants to make jobs, who wants to go after bad trade deals, who wants to hold China accountable for their AI and their human rights abuses, and who wants to save the world. Not who just wants to give America a bribe to reunify our press. If we reunify our press, we let the kid herders win. We can't have that. We cannot have that. Thanks for gabbing Aloha America, guys. Don't let them skeptical Skeksis steal your essence. Mahalo.